waiting for some people. Okay, thank you, Brad, for
You're
starting
welcome.
that. I just heard on my hearing aid.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. I hope everyone is well. Thank you for attending tonight's event and acknowledging that this is Deaf History Month. So happy Deaf History Month, which is, in case you didn't know, that from March 3rd to April 15th. My name is Jonathan Osak, the Social Media Director and Community Engagement Coordinator for the Boston chapter. I will be managing this Zoom meeting. So if you have any questions, please direct message me. Before I make a introduction, I would like to go over some ground rules. Here are some ground rules. As you know, captions are enabled. Meetings are being recorded to be made available to our members via YouTube. Please mute yourself during the presentation. Please hold questions to the end of each topic. And for the final one, for a Q&A, please raise your hand on the hand icon dotted below of the Zoom meeting. So with that being said, please welcome Dr. Nicole Laffan. She is an audiologist clinic director and associate clinical professor at Northeastern's Department of Communication Science and Disorder. She is licensed as both as an audiologist and a speech language pathologist with over 20 years of experience in hospitals, schools, and university. Currently, she provides patient care and clinic supervision at Northeastern Speech Language and Hearing Center and teaches courses such as Introduction to Audiologists and Childhood Language Disorder. She also chairs the Massachusetts Board of Registration and Speech Language Pathology and Audiologists. So Nicole, welcome to the meeting and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and welcome everyone. I tend to be a fast talker, so I'm going to work really hard to try to talk slow. Please do not hesitate to ask questions. You're welcome to ask them in the chat while I'm speaking, and we can certainly, at the end of the talk, have you unmute your mic and ask questions that way. So welcome, and I look forward to just sharing information with you about the services that can be offered at Northeastern Speech, Language, and Hearing Center. I do plan to share my screen so I can share some information in print. Okay, so our center is located right on the Boston campus of Northeastern University. It's accessible by the green line as well as the orange line, which are both walking distance to this entrance of our building. We also offer parking at no charge for patients that have registered for appointments and asked for parking. So the services that we provide I will be talking about the audiology services, but the title of our center is Speech, Language, and Hearing Center. So please be aware that we also offer services for individuals of all ages with speech and language concerns. But in terms of audiology, at our center, we offer hearing evaluations. Typically, The hearing evaluations cost $75. We do not take insurance. However, if a patient is interested in a consultation and they have had a hearing evaluation done at another location, we welcome them to bring that evaluation and are happy to offer a consultation at no charge. During the hearing evaluation, an important piece is really helping the patient to understand what that audiogram means. So often that isn't built into hearing evaluation appointments. I remember I've worked in a variety of settings, and we were unfortunately timed about how long we were with patients. And that piece was missing, which I think is critical. Having the patient really understand what their hearing loss means, how it will impact them, really taking the time to listen to a patient and have them share what situations they're having difficulty in and how they'd like to try to improve those listening challenges. So we spend time really reviewing the hearing evaluation results, whether they're done at Northeastern or whether a patient brings the results to us. Once we go over that, we're asking the patient to share information about where they're having hearing difficulties, what's important for them to change. And we're really working when we're helping them to select a device that's appropriate for them. We really need, it depends on the severity of their hearing loss. So, not every hearing aid is appropriate for every hearing loss. So we talk about what style of hearing aid, what level of technology would be appropriate for that patient based on what they're sharing with us about what their life is like and what their listening needs are. We also talk about dexterity. So it's critical for us to take into consideration, does this person have the ability to insert these hearing aids independently? That's our goal. We don't want to give something to a patient that they can't manipulate. So we're working with them to find out what their dexterity is like. We're also listening to what their cosmetic preferences are, guiding them and helping them so that they understand what it is they will be getting so that there's no surprises. Um, we also look at the financial piece, which is a very big concern for a lot of individuals. Not every individual needs the highest level of technology. There's a variety of levels, and we talk about the differences and help a patient pick what's best for them. So it is not the audiologist saying, this is what you have to have. Instead, it's a relationship being built where the patient's needs are heard and the audiologist is advising them. Because you've shared this, this is why I'm recommending this. Because you have this concern, this is why I'm recommending this. So it's really a partnership. If the individual decides to move forward and purchase amplification, um, the device is ordered. They are scheduled to come back for a fitting appointment, which is roughly 2 to 3 weeks later. During that fitting appointment, we encourage patients to bring loved ones, to bring a family member, a friend, somebody else that can be hearing information about the maintenance of the hearing aid, how to insert it, when to clean it. And so during that fitting appointment, it's usually about an hour and a half. We do something called real ear measurements. It is gold standard, but not every facility does that. And it's critical that we take into consideration the measurements of how the hearing aid is performing in the patient's ear canal. It may perform very differently in one ear versus the other, depending on the shape of the ear canal, the resonance of the ear canal. So that's all included in that fitting appointment. Also, in that appointment, if a patient has a smartphone, we are pairing the hearing aids to that individual's phone, helping the individual to download an app, and then teaching them how to use this app. So that's a lot of information in that hour and a half. So we build in a follow-up appointment roughly 2 weeks later. We want the patient to have time to go home, to write down what they like and don't like about the hearing aid. And what we encourage patients to do is to keep a list and to bring that list back to us when it's time for their follow-up appointment. And we tell patients that when they're new to wearing hearing aids or a new hearing aid, it takes some time to adjust to. So part of the things that are on their list when they come back to meet us in that follow-up appointment, they may have said, that doesn't bother me anymore. That doesn't bother me anymore. But these things still bother me. And it's critical that we have a relationship where the patient is thinking, I'm supposed to go back and express what I don't like. These devices are remarkable. The hearing aid technology has improved so much over the years, and so much can be done to make modifications to uh, help the patient regarding what it is that they're complaining about that they don't like. But that relationship needs to be there where the patient is encouraged. I can't fix things if you don't tell me what's wrong. I want you to come back. I want you to get your money's worth. These are expensive devices. Part of the expense is because there was the intellectual engineering that went into developing these devices, but a lot of it is also into having somebody that's listening to your concerns, and making the changes. There are so many changes that can be made in the programming, but I don't know what to change if a patient doesn't complain. So that relationship is critical. Um, After that follow-up appointment, patients are encouraged to come to another follow-up if they want. We can build in that second follow-up right away. For the first 6 months, there are no charges for visits. We want to make sure that we've have the patient comfortable that they're coming back. We're making modifications. We're making sure that they know how to insert it and how to maintain it. We're practicing using their the app on their phone, which functions like a remote control. So those appointments are built in. After the 6 months, we charge $25 for office visits. If a patient gets a hearing aid, typically the hearing aid is under warranty for 3 years, which means that, let's say, a year after they purchase a hearing aid, if they come back, so the 6 months has passed, it's a year later, they come back, they will be charged $25 for the office visit. But if the hearing aid needs a repair and needs to go out, for service, that service is then covered while it's under warranty for those 3 years. Um, the other services that we offer, and I will move on to another slide because I want to share information with you about our discounted hearing aid program. But we also offer the selection and fitting of hearing protection. Noise-induced hearing loss is the only hearing loss that's preventable. And there's a lot of individuals that aren't even aware that they could be preventing hearing loss. So we try to educate local schools, especially work with different colleges in the area that are educating musicians about how to protect their hearing. So for individuals that are interested in hearing protection, we also offer that. Um, There's another program, you can see it listed here as number 4 that I'll be talking more in length about. This is our oral rehabilitation program. This is a program that we offer at no charge to patients to learn more about hearing loss and how to cope with it. And I'll be getting into that in a few minutes. The 5th item here is central auditory processing. So we're one of 3 locations in Massachusetts that conducts central auditory processing evaluations as well as provides treatment. And this is for pediatric patients as well as adults. Um, what we know, the research is showing for adults that 60% of the population over the age of 65 have some central auditory processing challenges. We know that individuals that have hearing loss, we don't test for central auditory processing disorder if you have hearing loss, because we know that it's already challenging for those individuals. It certainly doesn't mean that we don't hear what their challenges are and try to come up with a treatment plan for them. But just be aware, we typically do not evaluate individuals that already have a known hearing loss unless it's just a mild hearing loss. And the last item here, number 6, hearing screenings in the community. Um, we have lots of contracts, mostly with schools, where we go to schools and conduct hearing screenings on their students. And that's to try to identify hearing loss at an early age, potential hearing loss that's being missed, so that we can encourage the families to try to make the right decision for them about whether to move forward with amplification or a different form of communication. Okay, so in terms of amplification, I've already walked through some of these with the selection process. We take into consideration the degree of hearing loss, whether it's mild, moderate, severe, profound. We also take into consideration the configuration. So, for example, if a patient has what we call a flat hearing loss, meaning that if you look at their audiogram, it almost looks like a line going across, a flat hearing loss. That means that they're hearing the softest sounds that they can hear, their thresholds are fairly the same across all frequencies. Um, those individuals are much easier to fit with hearing aids compared to an individual that has a configuration that we would call sloping. So imagine that it's much better in the low frequencies and it's sloping and it becomes worse in the higher frequencies. So for those patients, it's more challenging, especially if they have some normal hearing. If they have some normal hearing, we want to make sure that their fitting is considered an open fitting. So the sounds that they can hear naturally will travel into their ear canal and that they'll still be able to hear those in a natural form. So we're looking constantly at the degree of hearing loss, the configuration of the loss, as well as their word discrimination score, also called speech word discrimination or word recognition score. And that score is really important in terms of the counseling for patients. So a patient may have a moderate hearing loss, but their word discrimination score or word recognition score may be 50%. And what that means is that when sounds are loud enough, when they're presented at a comfortable volume, so simulating how they would be hearing with amplification, when they're hearing at a comfortable volume, those individuals are only understanding roughly 50% of the message. And that's a critical piece that's not often explained to patients. And if it's not explained, it's really unfair because a patient feels that I'm getting a hearing aid, I'm paying all this money. Why am I still struggling? So that's where the counseling piece comes in about having them really understand the limitations of amplification. And that's where we'll talk about oral rehabilitation. That I really feel like that's such a missing piece in the field of audiology. That audiologists oftentimes are not helping patients to learn other strategies to repair when breakdowns occur or to use other strategies, not just their hearing. So that's a piece that I think is critical as well, is understanding their hearing loss so that we can then coach them about not relying only on the hearing aid and only on the listening portion, but also on using visual cues. Um, so with the amplification process here at Northeastern, if patients are interested in amplification, as I mentioned, they can bring their own hearing evaluation or we can conduct one at Northeastern. We do not charge for consultations, so sharing information about hearing aids and coaching the individual or about what might be the best option for them. Um, and our discounted hearing aid program is called the Boston Guild for the Hard of Hearing Outreach Program. This is a program that is phenomenal in terms of the support financially that it can provide to patients. In order for one to qualify for this program, they have to complete an application. And that application we do have in English and in Spanish. And with that application, the patient is completing their information. It's their contact information, their name, their date of birth, where they live, their email, their phone number. They're also checking off a box that says that they do not have insurance, an insurance benefit to help cover hearing aids. And then the last part of that application is the patient having a member of the community fill it out in terms of being able to say that, yes, this individual would benefit from financial assistance. So in that application, it does not ask for the patient's income. It does not ask for taxes or any proof. We're going on the honesty system here, but we are asking that patients have a member of the community complete a small portion of it, just saying that they agree that this individual would benefit from having financial assistance. And that member of the community, we ask that it's not a family member, that it be a physician, a nurse, a dentist, social worker, landlord, somebody that knows the individual. So once that application gets sent back to us, and on that application, it has an address where it can be mailed, or it can be faxed, or it can also be emailed. And once that application is received, an individual at Northeastern reviews it and then contacts the patient to say that you've been approved and we'd like to schedule an appointment for you. So during that appointment, if the patient already had a hearing evaluation, we ask them to bring it. Otherwise, we conduct an evaluation and we provide a consultation about what we would recommend. At that time, some patients say, I'm ready to move forward and purchase a hearing aid. Some patients say, I'm not ready yet, but I'm thankful for this information. And sometimes we actually have patients that we say, yes, you're having challenges, but we do not recommend amplification. Instead, we'd recommend these strategies. So if it is recommended that a patient would benefit from amplification, the patient can pay $250 for one hearing aid or $950 for two hearing aids. And if a patient can't afford the two hearing aids, we say that they can pay pay $250 for one hearing aid and then get back on our list. And when their turn comes again, then they can come back and spend $250 on the second hearing aid. This is our way of trying to help as many people in the community as possible, but we certainly realize that there is an extreme benefit to wearing two hearing aids, and we certainly want to be recommending that to patients, but understand that not every patient can afford the $950 at one time. These hearing aids are under warranty for 3 years. The hearing aids, it is still the same thing where the first 6 months, there are no fees for visits. We want the patient to come back. We want to really make sure that we've heard what their concerns are. We've made the changes to their device, and then give them the time to practice in settings other than our quiet office, which is not the real world. We want them to go home. Tell me about what it was like on the train on your way home. Tell me about what it was like at work. in your meetings, so that their voice is heard and we can make those adjustments. But we can't make them without the patient coming back and telling us what their concerns are. So this program again is called the Boston Guild for the Hard of Hearing Outreach Program. We often talk about it just as the Guild program. And so that's something that if you're interested in, I know that your newsletter that went out had an advertisement on it with a QR code that if you put your phone up to it, your camera will if you put your camera on your phone up to that QR code, and it lights up in yellow, you can hit the yellow box and it'll bring you directly to our site, but I will also provide that information at the end. Okay. So the other part that's I think is so important and that we've been able to fund this through grant money is our program called the Oral Rehabilitation Program. And in this program, we offer it to patients across the country. At first, it used to be offered only to individuals that purchased hearing aids from Northeastern. And then during the pandemic, I had a lot more time working from home. So we opened it up and said, tried to advertise it so that we could try to help individuals across the country. And it was a lot more feasible because we were able to offer it virtually compared to prior to the pandemic. It was offered in person in our conference room. So we continue to offer these sessions at no charge for individuals that have hearing challenges. Some individuals will come and join these sessions and report that they do have hearing difficulties, but hearing aids were not recommended for them, or they can't afford hearing aids. And we will still certainly provide as much support for them as possible, during these 2 sessions. So these sessions that patients register for are private sessions. The individual registers for them, and they're welcome to have a loved one join them, or a friend, or a boss. I facilitate these 2 sessions along with 2 graduate students. And the 2 graduate students are students that are studying speech language pathology and have been educated already on these topics. So the sessions are private. The topics that we cover are the first session. As I mentioned, it's 2 sessions. They're about an hour and a half each. And they typically run on 2 consecutive Thursdays or 2 consecutive Mondays, but the patient will be aware of it and will agree that those times that session works for them when they register for it. During the first session, we encourage the patient not to rely only on the auditory message. So often as audiologists, we're coaching the patient about getting the best hearing aid, use your hearing. However, we know that it doesn't fix every situation. Hearing aids can't help every situation. We need to counsel the individual on how to improve communication by using other means. So we do encourage them to have hearing aids that are fit appropriately, using real ear measurement if possible, seeking an audiologist, not buying a hearing aid over the counter or online. The over the counter hearing aids are, that could be another discussion. I'll stay on topic. But in our first session, we're encouraging the individual to certainly use their hearing, but not to rely on just that. Instead, we talk about the predictability of language. So we know what words are nonsense words and what words make sense. So if a patient hears a nonsense word, we encourage them, in our language, those 2 sounds don't go together. So trust yourself. We talk about using context clues. So thinking about when you go to a doctor's office, preparing for a few minutes before any interaction. you're preparing, you're anticipating what might be said so you can prepare to better follow along with the conversation. So we go over activities such as if you do go to the doctor's office, let's think about what might be said by the receptionist. Receptionist might greet you, might ask you for your name, your date of birth, ask you for identification, ask you if your insurance has changed. Those questions will be different from once you go in and see your physician. Your physician won't be asking you those questions, won't ask you questions about your insurance. So, predicting what one might say can help an individual relieve some stress because they're more prepared to follow along that conversation. So, we talk a lot about um, predictability of language, anticipating what one might say. We also do practicing um, if an individual has an idea of what the context is, then they can often fill in the blank. So we review if you hear the key word in the sentence, but you miss the rest of it, what might they have said? So we practice that where we're trying to build the patient's self-esteem that they have a lot of information, that when they're missing the auditory piece, that they can use these cues to help them. We talk about visual cues, such as speech reading, reading the scene, reading the individual's body language, facial expressions. We go over lip reading. We review the sounds that are visible around the lips, and we also talk about many sounds that are not visible, that we say, let's ignore those ones. There's no visual cue from those sounds. That's too hard. Let's focus on the ones that are visible. And we do lip reading practice. We encourage the patient to modify their listening environment, to turn down any background noise, to identify this is hard because the traffic noise is bothering me. Let's close the window. So there are things that one can do to modify their environment that we coach them through. Um, we also talk about ways to advocate for themselves. So we talk to them about what their rights are, especially in terms of employment and getting the services that they need from an employer. We also talk about safety for individuals to be able to feel safe in terms of being able to hear their doorbell, being able to hear their alarm. We talk about caption called phones. We talk about apps that turn speech to text so the individual can read them. So we talk about techniques that they can use to support them in order to be able to communicate with any individual for the most part. And then we talk about repair strategies. We're very realistic that breakdowns will occur, and we talk about how to repair those. One of our number one things is encouraging patients to eliminate the word what. So often, if we don't hear something, we say, what? The speaker doesn't know what the listener missed. So the speaker might repeat the whole story, or the speaker might be rude and say, never mind. But if the listener can give more information about what they heard, what they missed, and what they need, then they can get the message faster. So instead of saying, what? One could say, tell them what they heard. I heard you up until this word. What was the ending? They could tell them what they missed. I missed the beginning part. Can you repeat that? They can tell them what they need. I need you to talk slower, please. It'll help me if you could repeat that again. So we go over strategies. So for those 2 sessions, individuals again meet with 2 graduate students and myself. They're virtual sessions, and we try to individualize it. So for example, we have patients reporting having difficulty communicating with their daughter who's um, speaking to them from speakerphone all the time. We talk about strategies, things that they can do to devices that they can use. So we certainly try to hear what their individual concern is and to try to also customize the sessions for them. So that's called our Better Hearing program. Again, it's an oral rehabilitation program that we offer at no charge. It is virtually provided, and it really is an amazing resource, I find. And every patient that joins, it's phenomenal what the students learn from that patient. It gives them an opportunity to hear firsthand um, what life is like for an individual that has some hearing challenges. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen um, to see if anybody has any specific issues about uh, the Guild discounted hearing program or our oral rehabilitation program called the Better Hearing program.
Well, first of all, there are a couple of things I would like to add before we go on. Everything that you just said, Nicole, I pretty much jumped ahead of you, and I just added in the chat room two links of what you just mentioned about the Better Hearing program and the Gallup program. So if you guys want to take a look in the chat room and just click on the link, all the information that Nicole has shared tonight is all in there. And as well as we do have one question for you, Nicole. Somebody just posted on the chat room, and so it's asking you, what are thoughts on also doing SNR test? He thinks it's called, and do you include T-coil in all hearing aids? If not, please explain your reasoning.
Sure. So great question about signal to noise ratio testing. That's what SNR stands for. And um, the hearing aids, a lot of hearing aids come with noise reduction programs in them. So it's important for patients to be able to understand how to switch in to that program. And when they're in a noise reduction program, the goal of it is to improve the signal, the main signal that one wants to listen to, and to try to reduce the background noise. So there are noise reduction programs that are built into certain hearing aids. Some of them, the more advanced hearing aids, so the best technology, the more expensive ones, do it more automatically so that the patient doesn't even realize that the hearing aid is analyzing the input signal and saying, this is speech, that's noise. I'm going to lower the noise and raise the speech. If an individual's automatic program doesn't do that as well, depending on the level of technology they have, the audiologist can build in a program specifically for them. So when the patient is in their default program, we teach them how to switch to another program that's designed to help them hear speech better in the presence of noise. Our goal is always to try to improve the signal to noise ratio. Um, for an individual, depending on their settings, I mentioned that that's our goal. But sometimes hearing aids still can't help in certain situations. So if a patient reports that they're having challenges in a meeting, that they're having challenges listening to one talker when there's multiple conversations going on, let's say that they're working and they're working in cubicle style. So we listen to the patient and come up with different options for them. There are augmentative devices, so hearing assistive technology that can be paired with hearing aids that allows the hearing aid user to hear their main source, whether it is their boss in a meeting, whether it is at a lecture, the person in front of them, whether it is the individuals that they're sitting with during a small meeting, or their family when they're sitting and they're at a restaurant. So the hearing assistive technology can be paired to the individual's hearing aid. And what it's doing is the microphones on the hearing assistive technology. For example, if I was wearing one and if I was paired to somebody's hearing aid, then my voice would go directly to their hearing aid, and they could be seated at a far distance. I would be encouraging them to sit close so that they can read lips, read facial expressions, remember to use those visual cues along with the hearing. But hearing assistive technology is really remarkable to try to improve the signal to noise ratio. In terms of telecoils, I think telecoils are phenomenal, but I listen to patients about what their listening needs are, where they communicate mostly, to make sure that the telecoil will be beneficial for them. Telecoils are, in some hearing aids, they make the hearing aid a little bit larger. So that's important for just a new hearing aid user to select, to be aware of that. Telecoils should certainly be talked about because they have many, many wonderful features. If they're in an environment that has a loop system, if they're in that loop system, it is a coil that's put around the perimeter of the room, and the individual that's located inside of that coil, if they activate their telecoil, what it does is it picks up the electromagnetic flux from the telecoil. So the speaker who's holding a microphone that might be in the front of the room, their voice is sent directly to the patient's hearing aids. So it is remarkable. However, if I have a patient that is not in environments that has a loop system, then I would be counseling them about what situations are you in? If you're okay with the hearing aid being a little bit larger, then we would certainly be recommending it. Also, depending on if they're using a loop system around their neck that can allow them to connect to other devices. What will be interesting as we learn more about Auracast, with Auracast, this is a new, it's believed to be out in 2030, so in just 5 years from now. The belief is that Auracast, which is a broadcasting system, will be available in train locations, train stations, airports.
Schools, concerts.
I don't know if it'll be, that's where I worry about. Jonathan mentioned schools. So my understanding is that it'll be in public locations, and it will be, the hearing aid companies are now making their hearing aids Auracast ready so that they can be prepared for if an individual that had a hearing aid that was Auracast ready was walking through an airport that was using Auracast and an announcement came on, that announcement would be sent directly to the patient's hearing aids. My worry is that individuals in schools, in certain work environments, as well as at home, will not have that. So we do need to be thinking about those individuals and making sure that they're aware of, is there a telecoil that can help in that situation? Or is there hearing assistive technology that can help in that situation? So working with the patient beyond just the hearing aid. However, when patients first come for hearing aids, it's overwhelming. So if the patient is knowledgeable and asking questions about these augmentative devices that can be added, then we certainly discuss it. However, I don't want to feel like I'm selling a patient, you need this hearing aid and you need this other device. So oftentimes we start with the amplification. But Harry, thank you for bringing up the telecoil and the importance of really hearing patients about what other services can be provided that could go along with their hearing aid.
Thank you, Nicole. That was a fantastic input, and that was a lot of information. Absolutely. I do know that Harry has 2 more questions, but before we get to Harry, Paul had his physical hand up. So, Paul, if you could just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Nicole a question.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, Paul.
Awesome. Okay. Couple of things, Nicole. Questions here. Is there any reason why your central program does not allow insurance to pay for hearing tests at all? Because when I go to my audiologist, my insurance covers the hearing test from that person as well.
Yes, our clinic is the only clinic on campus at Northeastern, and the clinic at Northeastern, we've looked into the option of taking insurance, but it's a whole nother support system that we would need that we don't have just from our little center.
Okay. There was another question I was supposed to ask here.
However, Paul, sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
If a patient has a hearing aid benefit, we encourage them to contact their insurance company. And because we're providers, can they be reimbursed? Can the individual pay out of pocket?
Okay.
And we are happy to fill out an invoice, fill out the codes to support them getting reimbursed. But we always say to a patient, we're not comfortable without you first checking with your insurance company.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes in regards to the T-coil, you're saying that hearing aids are bigger? Well, not exactly true, because I just bought hearing aids, Phonak, and they're really small, and they do have coil.
Great, and there is a difference in the size. It's not a drastic difference, but that's
Okay.
something we show patients for patients that are concerned about the cosmetic piece.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Is there any other question, Paul, before we go on to the next person?
I think I'm okay for now.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And we're gonna go on to the next question to Nina Silver. If you can unmute yourself, Nina, and ask a question to Nicole.
Hi.
Hi.
That was how come my picture doesn't show up?
It does for us. I'm able to see
Oh,
you.
okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. First of all, thank you for such a comprehensive presentation. I really only have two questions. Are you aware that Gallaudet University had a peer mentoring program? I went through that program. There's at least one other person in Massachusetts who went through that program. And the purpose of the program mainly was to give audiologists the opportunity to have an educated, person, a person who knows about audiology and about oral rehab and all of that, involved in oral rehab. So your oral rehab sessions would be a fantastic place for one of these peer mentors, because there's nothing like knowing a peer. I mean, that's what HLAA is all about. We're all peers to each other. So I want to put that out there. That as a suggestion, and I'd be happy to talk with you outside of this meeting about that program. It's a fantastic program. Secondly, my question is, you talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you talked about the price of the hearing aid covering the follow-up visits, like a portion of that price goes to covering the follow-up visit. What would be the difference in price between just the hearing aid and the hearing aid plus the follow-up visit? I'm asking this because I'm working on the hearing aid bill.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt you.
No, you didn't.
We unbundled our prices to try to make it less expensive for individuals. So although our prices tend to be less than a lot of our competitors, because we're a teaching university, so the manufacturers are excellent with trying to work with us so that we can educate our students on their products, which allows us to then provide the products at a lesser rate to individuals in the community. So we have, years ago, we were offering hearing aids at one cost, and that cost included the hearing aid, any visit, repairs, within a 2-year period. And what we found is we were trying, that cost was in place before I started at Northeastern. And when I started there, we continued to use that cost. And I started to ask why. How did we decide that it's free for 2 years when some patients never come in, but yet they're billed that portion as part of the cost, the upfront cost? So to decrease the upfront cost, we unbundled. So we took out all of those, the appointments that we were anticipating needing to pay an audiologist for, needing to pay for our space that we're seeing never, or the equipment as well. And by doing that, we're paying for, the patient's paying for the cost of the device. They're paying for the expertise of the audiologist that's providing the fitting and the fitting equipment. So that's built into the sale of the hearing aid. And then for the first 6 months, there's no charge for visits. After that, our visits are $25 for the office visit. So we tried to find a way to reduce the cost. I certainly don't think that that's the price at other locations. Northeastern is very much wanting to support members of the community and help individuals that need support. So, you know, Northeastern is allowing us to use this space without the overhead that one would have if they had a private practice somewhere else. So because of that, we're trying to just keep our prices down for patients. So if a patient does not apply for the Guild program, the discounted hearing aid program, if they do not need that financial assistance, then we certainly have patients that come in and pay privately, and their price is still, they're telling us, is reduced compared to other locations.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, go ahead, Nina.
But I'm sorry. I think maybe I wasn't clear on my question. Just because we're trying to put together this hearing aid bill, if a person, no, I understand trying to reduce the cost. I think that's great. I actually went to Northeastern, so
Yay.
and I worked that long time ago. Anyway, so what was I gonna say? Oh, suppose somebody wanted to come in and just buy the hearing aid. So I guess what I'm asking is, as a hearing aid dispenser, what do you pay for the hearing aid? Because we want to see if we can get insurance to cover the rest of it. That's what we're putting in the bill, so that you still are paid for your expertise, but it's insurance that's paying for it. Does that make sense?
It is, and I wish I could give you a straight answer.
Okay.
The cost of the hearing aid to us is different than it is to every other office in the state.
Right.
So the manufacturer creates a contract with a company that says, if you're only selling my hearing aids, then that means you're probably selling how many a month? Okay, if you're selling that a month, then we're going to give it to you at this rate. Versus if you're a company that works with multiple hearing aid dispensers, and you may only sell their brand, you know, a few times a week, then they're looking at it as the contract is different. So there's no set price. I couldn't tell you what another practice gets versus what we get. But that's where, you know, for some individuals on the business side of it, they're trying to negotiate the pricing, or they're trying to say, I'm only going to work with 1 or 2 hearing aid companies that are really reliable, that have great products, great service, because I can get a better rate if I'm working with less companies.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I do cooperate with Nina about the Hearing Aid Act, and we're gonna be sharing some information later on, a couple of slides further down. Before we get to that, I see Harry on the chat room, who has been very supportive and cheering it on, and he said that we need to speak up and be vocal and let people know that we have a hearing loss. We can't be embarrassed for having hearing loss, which is well said, Harry. Absolutely, I definitely agree that people definitely need to be aware of our surroundings and let them be able to acknowledge to say, hey, I have a hearing loss. Could you please speak up? Which is that's something that you mentioned it earlier. And one of the questions that Harry wanted to ask you from the previous questioning was that how does one sign up for the Arrow Rehab?
So if they're interested in the oral rehabilitation, they can use the link that Jonathan put in the chat, or I'm going to put in the chat right now my email address. You can contact me directly by email.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nicole. That will be very helpful. And I think that we still got a couple more questions until 7:15, but we're going to go back to Paul, who has raised his hand again. So, Paul, if you could unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Nicole.
There we go. Takes me a while with the Zoom here. Nicole, when the person buys the hearing aids, are they brand new or are they refurbished? Because I know that you have several years ago, you had a program that provides free refurbished hearing aids or for a donation or something like that. Is that still happening, or is that you up the ante with the program?
So we only offer new hearing aids. We do not sell, we're not allowed to sell any used devices. We only provide new devices. However, if a patient donates their hearing aid, we have a letter that we leave the amount blank in terms of what the patient feels that the value of that device is. And they can use that if they itemize on their taxes. And then we use the donated hearing aid to educate our students with, to practice inserting batteries, changing battery doors, learning how to charge or clean hearing aids. So we may or may not be able to use the donated hearing aid, but that is a way to for you to give back old devices and also to get a tax benefit from it.
Okay, yeah, because I remember years ago, I had a client when I was working with Deaf Incorporated, and she needed hearing aids. She couldn't afford it, so I went to your program, and they gave her a really nice refurbished hearing aid, and she made a donation of like $100 or something like that, 50 or something like that.
Okay.
But it's good to know that you're now giving out brand new hearing aids.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So,
Thank you, Paul. That was a great question. I wanted to add a few things on the chat room of what Harry has been. Harry has been very supportive of every meetings that whenever we create a meeting, Harry has been part of our wonderful supporting guy. He also said in the chat room that ERICAT and T-Coil need to coexist for some 10 years. Both should have included in hearing aids when ERICAT starts being more common in new hearing aids. And then he shared a link called centerforhearingaccess.org. So go ahead and check it out whenever you guys have a chance. And then Harry posted another one that says that in Lion Clubs and Sturmina, I believe, accept used hearing aids, which was replied by what Paul just mentioned earlier. Does anybody have any more questions before we go on?
Harry, thank you for sharing those resources. I also wanted to add, Starkey is a hearing aid company in the US, and it's a phenomenal family-owned company. And they have something called Starkey Mission, where on their website, you have the ability to go on and you can fill out an application if you need financial assistance. And if you qualify, they will connect you with a provider near you that, and they will provide a Starkey hearing aid at a discounted rate.
I would like to add that. Thank you, Nicole. I would
Yeah.
like to add that Starkey is one of the biggest sponsor of the HLAA National, so everybody's very familiar with it.
And that's something that I share with individuals that aren't close to Northeastern, because if they're near Northeastern, I encourage them to use the Guild program. But if they're not, then I certainly want to try to provide other suggestions for them.
Thank you so much for providing that. Like I said, I added in the chat room of all the link and the information that Nicole had shared tonight, and it seems to be that Harry did say that Starkey does a lot of great research. He has one more question. Should I push my audiologist to do the SNR? They only do ear canal test.
So there's not necessarily a specific signal to noise ratio test. There are tests that audiologists can do in the booth, which is listening to speech and noise. However, if you're reporting to your audiologist that I'm having these challenges, then I hope your audiologist is listening to you and creating different listening programs for you to use in those challenging environments. And if those options are not working, then talking to you about using your telecoil, using hearing assistive technology paired with your hearing aid to
Thank you, Nicole.
provide the best signal to noise ratio.
That's definitely good to know. That was a lot of information, and I'm sure that everybody has been educated about that. Harry just say they do the words with the background static and the tones, of course. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like they're doing a thorough evaluation for you, and you did report in another chat that they do what you said was the ear canal test. If they're testing how the hearing aid is performing when it's in your ear, with a little probe tube that might tickle when they're inserting it, and then they put your hearing aid in, they're measuring exactly how the hearing aid is performing as you sit and listen to the same sentence over and over again. And then they're modifying your hearing aid based on the results from that assessment, which we call real ear measurements.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Is there some sort of a do you have like any link or anything that you would like to share, Nicole?
Not regarding to real ear measurements, just that it should be part of every hearing aid fitting. And unfortunately, it's not required. So it's not added, not every audiologist and certainly hearing instrument specialists are providing it. But it is a critical piece that I encourage every patient to, before they work with an audiologist, to ask, do you provide real ear measurements?
That's an excellent advice, Nicole. You know, I've met Nicole before, and she's fantastic. So if you guys have any questions or any advice, she just share the email, and she'll be very happy to comment and give you some information. And now it seems to be that we got 4 minutes left before the meetings. So that's right. Betsy, do we agree? I think you are familiar with Betsy Iran.
Yes, Betsy is such an amazing advocate for students and faculty at Northeastern University. Betsy works in the disability, I'm pausing because it used to be called the DRC and now it's the DAS, Disability Access Services Department.
Yes.
And she does a phenomenal job of encouraging students that have hearing loss to come to our center, and she pushes to get the support financially for these students to be fit with hearing assistive technology while they're students at Northeastern. She does a phenomenal job. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy. So now, as seems to be that we have finished our little Q&A, and so now we're gonna go to the next slide. Now, as you can see, what we discussed earlier, I'm gonna give a little, maybe 2.5, 3 minutes to allow Nina Silver, if you could unmute yourself and just quickly share about what's going on with the Hearing Aid Act bill.
Hi, folks. As you know, hearing aids are very expensive. And that is not because of the audiologist or the hearing aid dispensers. It has to do with how hearing aids are classified by insurance companies. And they are classified as cosmetic. And they need to be, that needs to be changed, and they need to be classified in the same category as a wheelchair or crutches. And that is called durable medical equipment, or DME. So Paul Gambina and I have, and Betsy, who we were just talking about, have worked for many years to try to get a bill passed to help cover the cost of hearing aids through insurance companies. And Representative Sean Gobbley from our state legislature is putting forth such a bill, and it's called HD 330. It's an act for insurance to cover the cost of hearing aids. I put that in the chat. HD 315. Okay, so if you can contact your own legislatures and ask them to co-sponsor this bill, that would be great. So the bill, what the bill says is that the insurance companies, and we're talking about private insurance companies, not state insurance companies. Private insurance companies would cover one hearing aid per hearing impaired ear every 36 months upon a written statement from the treating physician that the hearing aids are necessary regardless of etiology, provided that if the person's treating physician provides a written statement that the person's hearing capability has changed. So you can get one hearing aid per hearing impaired ear. So one per ear, because with 2 ears. Anyways. And then every 36 months, but then if your hearing changes, you can get a hearing aid sooner because there's been a change, and the physician or the audiologist would have to show proof of that. And then it also says that they're covered under this section of the bill. Hold on, I'm reading the the copy that the representative gave me that has some, it has some in red and some in black, and so it's from the track changes program in Word. Anyway, okay, so the cover, it would include the hearing aid and the initial hearing aid evaluation, fitting, and adjustments and supplies, including ear molds and batteries. And last night we suggested that they also cover, we call them hearing accessories, but Nicole had a better word for it. That I'm looking for what it was she said in the
Hey,
chat.
Nicole. Yeah, hey, Nicole, last night, me, Paul, and I, we collaborate to make we were drafting a bill together, and we were trying to come up with a right term to say, so instead of saying hearing aid accessories, what do you call? Do you have another term for that?
So hearing assistive technology that's paired with hearing aids.
So yeah, so basically we're trying to find a term, for example, for accessories, because we want the insurance to cover certain accessories like batteries, larger pen, TV streamer, etc.
So the Roger on, the TV streamer, those are considered hearing assistive technology. The batteries are something different. The batteries would be an accessory.
Okay.
Previously you said augmentative devices. Would that
So-
be a proper term?
But again, we would need to think about, and I'm more than happy to work with you to try to work on this bill. I would love to support this. If we said augmentative devices, technically a hearing aid can be hearing assistive technology or an assistive listening device. But we think of amplification as, the term that either amplification means hearing aids, implantable devices, and then either it used to be an ALD, now it's referred to more as an HAT, hearing assistive technology that can be paired with an implant or paired with a hearing aid. So all of that is covered under amplification. So it would be something that we can certainly work on offline about trying to figure out exactly what we should word in order to have devices covered for patients.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, Nina, you got Nicole's email, so you guys can collaborate and come up with a perfect term for that certain product into the bill. I'm going to give a really quick for Paul, if Paul wants to say something.
Hi, yeah, just to give you another generalization about the hearing aid bill. There was another bill prior that was focusing on children, individuals from 21 years of age and below, and then individuals who work for the state, and then those who are 65 and over. What we're trying to do is fill the gap from the ages of 18 to 65, where they're doing that suddenly, okay, they reach the age of 21, and what do? Where do they go? How are they going to pay? So this bill will help fill in the gap that far from the age 21, age 18 and up, per se. So I just want to get add that as well. And another thing I think I like Nicole's suggestion, maybe we can work on is the technology and the terms of that. So.
Thank you, Paul. Like I said, Nicole has shared her email address in the chat room. So if you have any questions or anything, you can reach out to her. Go ahead, Nina.
Thank you, Paul, for adding that. So basically, when we're talking about the filling the gap, so this insurance would be for, working people. So if you got a job someplace and you got insurance through your employer, then this is where this bill would apply. So that insurance would be required to cover the cost of hearing aids with a copay of $200. That's what we put in there. And we'll see where it goes. Paul and I have been working on trying to get a bill passed, and Betsy, who we were talking about before, for 30 years. And we've never been able to do it, but we're not giving up. And we're going to keep doing this. I'm going to be providing a template for people to ask their reps and senators to co-sponsor this bill that will go into the next newsletter. And then for those of you who are going to be coming to the
Hearing
regional
loss
conference.
near New England, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Those of you who are coming, I'll be there, Paul will be there, to talk more about this. And, down the line, I'm gonna provide an example of a letter that you can write to your rep and senator when it's time to support the bill when it goes to a hearing. And also, it's extremely important to come to the hearing. There's a huge advantage to strength in numbers. That's what I do as a community organizer. So feel free, I'll put my email here in the chat as well. And you can email me with any questions. And you can ask me questions now if there's time. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Jonathan, for letting me, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Absolutely, Nina. That was a great opportunity for you to share, and I know that everybody's going to be supportive of this bill, and I know that having Nicole tonight as a audiologist, hopefully, she'll definitely support this bill as well. This is a great deaf and hard of hearing community, and we're all coming together. So with that being said, we're going to continue on to the next slide. And so now I'm going to be sharing with a couple of events coming up. So there's this Museum of Science, who happens to be my partnership, and they have a event called Time Reconsider Aging and Disability. When? On Friday night at 7 p.m. We're in the Blue Wing at the Museum of Science. You can see on the bottom, you can scan the QR code, or you can take a picture, and that will go directly for you to register, and that will give you a ticket to go to the Museum of Science, or you can do that through Zoom as well. So I just added my email address in the chat room. So if you guys have any questions, need anything, please feel free to ask. And and this one, I'm gonna leave that up to our wonderful website designer, Brad McKenna. Brad, if you could quickly just share what this event is about.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I am, as Jonathan mentioned, the technology director for the HLA Boston chapter. I'm also a librarian, and I also wear hearing aids. And I've been more open about my hearing loss in the library. And I do tech help sessions with patrons so they can book an hour of my time, and I can go over whatever technology is troubling them, that their grandkids gave them for Christmas and they have no idea how to use. So I've been doing that for like 10 years. In the last year or so, some of the sessions started being like hearing aid consults. They wanted to know how I use my hearing aids. So I decided to put together a recurring class. And so the fourth Monday of every month at 7 o'clock, either virtually or in person, You can join. You can join as many as you want. And I show people what I use. And I show people and I answer questions about assistive technology and what other people can use. And I really want this to be a dialogue because I wear Oticon, which has the companion app. Jonathan has Phoniac, which has my Phoniac. So it depends on what manufacturer you have. And this session is really meant to just get the conversation going. And so please, if you are free next Monday, I put the registration link in the chat. Please join and tell us about what applications work for you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Just a quick question. Somebody just asked you a question in the chat room. Do you have any ASL in your library?
So no. So I work for Wilmington, and I wanted to get a T-coil for the conference room, but they're expensive, and we're a smaller library. And the MBTA rezoning project. So every city that has a commuter rail stop has to rezone the area around the stop in order to have more housing. But because it changes the town has to vote to approve that, and they did not approve it. And so now I lost my ability to go for an ADA grant from the state. So I'm looking into other options, but we don't have any, unfortunately. So to combat that, what I've been trying to do is caption everything. So I make sure that Zoom has the captions on for all programming. I talk about the Ava app, right? So like that's the best AI app that if you can't afford the cart captions or assisted listening technologies, that's what we kind of use. And so I'm trying to think outside the box and figure out a way to do that. We celebrated World Hearing Day. Jonathan was there. And we had somebody talk. And so what I did was there was no presentation. I just brought up Ava on an iPad, connected it to the projector, and then the speaker could stand next to the screen and all the captions would show up. It's not perfect, but with libraries not being flush with cash, I'm making the best use of what we got. But yeah, Harry, absolutely. I think this is something that we have to do a lot more of. I'm actually involved in the ALA, the Hearing Loss Association of America. They have an interest group about deaf cultures. And so I'm trying to get other libraries across the country to pool resources and figure out where our opportunities are for what assisted listening devices work for them. So it's a work in progress, but we need to do better. We really do when it comes to accessibility. And so it's an
Thank you,
ongoing
Brad.
project.
Thank you, Brett, for all that information. There's a QR code that you can scan and to register, and Brad's information, including his email, is in there. So if you guys have any questions, need anything, just feel free to contact Brad, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And I always say this to everybody in the deaf and hard of hearing community. There are millions of ways that we can find to communicate. So I'm pretty sure that Brad will find another way to communicate. And before I go on to the next slide, I think I saw Carrie had her hand raised. Carrie, you can mute yourself.
Yes, I was just going to mention what Brad brought up about the projected caption. So all good.
Okay. As usual, Brad likes to be ahead of everybody and able to take over what they were going to say even before they say something. So that's
Quick, Jonathan. You got to be quicker.
And I think that Paul has a question for you, Brad.
I don't have a question here, but I also wanted to mention another program. It's called the Massachusetts Equipment Distribution Program, and they provide free telephones for people who are hard of hearing or deaf. Actually, we are now giving out cell phones So I'll write out the website if you want more information about that. If you, the eligibility is that you have to be residents of Massachusetts, must have a disability, and must have a working phone, a landline or cell phone. Those are the 3 requirements. If you earn below 50,000, 50 or 50,000, it's totally free. Anything up to 50,000, you have a one-time copay. It's a really good program. It's something you might want to look into. I'll put the website on the chat right now.
Thank you, Paul. That was great. I just sent in the chat room. If you could share your email address to us for more information, that was absolutely fantastic. And so now we're on to the next slide. As what Nina was saying earlier, so we have in this on March 28th to the 30th, we have a New England Hearing Loss Convention. For those already registered, the details is on that website. And if you have any questions, comments, anything, email to Brad McKenna. There's his email address. I do know this is going to be a great event. We have so many people coming to this wonderful event, and I think that with there's been talks about hopefully doing this thing next year. So we will keep you guys posted about that. And then next month, our next Zoom meeting, we have Dr. King John, and her title is Understanding Your Audiogram and Hearing Aid Technologies, which is on April 23rd at 6 p.m. Here are the information. Here's the QR code. You can scan it to register to our Zoom meeting, and we will send you guys a reminder of the meeting. It's going to be fantastic. She's very well known to work. I think that she works in some sort of a health hospital or something. I forget what it's called. But yeah, all the information is in the QR code. And not at least my favorite one of all, in case you guys noticed, I've been collaborating with the Wood Sox and the Boston Red Sox. I did this last year, and we're doing it again this year. So on May 23rd, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Awareness Day at the Polo Park in Worcester, Massachusetts at 6 p.m. And then on June 3rd, the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park, which is very close to Nicole and the Northeastern University, is Disability Pride Celebration on June 3rd at 7 p.m. If you have any questions or need help, my email address is in the chat room and in the slideshow. It looks like we pretty much caught up on everything. Is there anything, Nicole, that you would like to add before we sum this up?
I just wanted to thank everybody that joined, because I've learned from you as well. And Paul, I certainly plan on adding information about your mass equipment distribution program. I'd love to find out your email to gain more about that, so I can share that with participants that are joining our oral rehabilitation program that might be in the Boston area. So I think resources like this are phenomenal. Thank you, HLAA, for providing this session and allowing us to meet each other. And Brad, I'm right next to Wilmington, so I'd be happy to present if you ever need it, but it's great to know that I can tell neighbors and community members that you offer that at your library. So again,
Yeah,
thank
send
you
it in.
everybody for
Yeah.
collaborating.
Thank you so much, everybody. Again, happy Deaf History Month. And thank you, Nicole, for being here tonight. Carrie Sylvan, who's the president of the HLAA Boston. Brad, thank you for sharing. Nina, thank you for sharing the hearing aid app bill. We are looking forward to hear more about you guys. If you guys have any questions, need anything, please feel free to email us. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.